Boy, the Laval Rocket are certainly going through some significant growing pains very early in their season. We have a lot to talk about today. Coming off of a dismal road trip to end the month of October, the Laval Rocket were likely glad to be back in Laval and get things kind of back on track, maybe try to start to take control a bit of their season in the 3 games that they played last week. But while there were some positive moments, there were a lot of disappointments as well. So today we are going to review the 3 games that the Laval Rocket played last week. We are going to take a closer look at the prospect breakdown, tell you how the Montreal Canadiens prospects performed in those games last week, choose one of them to be this week's Standout Star, and then we'll take a look at what's ahead on the calendar this week in the Laval Look Ahead. 3 games on home ice last week, important games for the points race, for the standings race, starting with Utica Comets on Wednesday night. That is the AHL affiliate of the New Jersey Devils. And this was a real opportunity for Laval, seeing as Utica has started their season almost struggling as much as Laval has. In fact, coming into that game on Wednesday night, Utica was sitting just 1 place ahead of Laval in the North Division standings. And as I said, this was a real opportunity for the Rocket to kick off their homestand on a positive note, really grab a hold of this opportunity and get that win and start the week on the right foot. Unfortunately, that wasn't meant to be, and somehow Utica came out on top in this one 4-1. Defensive turnovers, again, an issue. The defense was a bit leaky on this night. Some positives, I was pleased to see Jakub Dobes back in the crease. He, kicking off the goaltending duties for the week when there were 3 games on the calendar. Didn't get shut out. Remember, they're coming off of that shutout in Syracuse, and when Joel Bouchard's new team, the Syracuse Crunch, had just beaten them on Saturday night with a 5-0 victory. So they did manage to get 1 goal on the board, but it just was a disappointment overall that against a team that was closer to them in the standings towards the bottom, they still weren't able to come out victorious. Also concerning was that 2 nights later, the Toronto Marlies came to town for their first regular season visit, and the Toronto Marlies on the score sheet and the stat sheet were at a completely different position than the Utica Comets. The Toronto Marlies sitting near the top of the division, the conference, and the league. This was going to be a much bigger task and a much tougher task for the Laval Rocket, with a back-to-back series Friday night and Saturday night against their division rival, the Toronto Marlies. I was very pleasantly surprised to see Jakub Dobes get tapped again for the start in goal. This is what a young goaltending prospect like Dobes needs. He needs the ice time, he needs the reps, and he needs that on-ice experience to really get into a rhythm and really start to build up the muscle memory of what the speed and just the game overall at the AHL level is like. So I really liked this decision by JF Uhl to go back to Dobes again. And to his credit, Jakub Dobes backstopped the Laval Rocket to a win against the Toronto Marlies on Friday night, and they did it in style. Let me tell you, he made some really great saves. Some of them were pretty impressive, and he really kept Laval in it, particularly in the second period, where it was a little even back and forth between the Marlies and the Rocket. The Marlies didn't come out as dominantly as I think some of us assumed and expected them to. The Laval Rocket did a good job of kind of clogging up the neutral zone and not giving the Marlies a ton of space, and Dobes did a solid job in the net for them, and so that allowed them in the third period for Laval to put up 4 unanswered goals and win this one 5-3. It was a spectacular showing. Second win of the season for the Laval Rocket, which was, of course, a big celebration. Interesting that both of their wins have come on Friday nights at home at Place Bell with Jakub Dobes in the crease. So could they carry that momentum forward 24 hours and do the same thing again on Saturday night? Well, Toronto certainly made some adjustments in those 24 hours. This time, I was surprised yet again, not as pleasantly, to see that Dobes was tapped for a third game on the week. Yes, Dobes got all 3 starts this week, and I sort of can understand what was probably maybe the rationale behind it, that, the big win on Friday night and how solidly he performed, particularly compared with how much Strauss-Mann has really struggled in the crease so far for them this season. That was probably as close to quote unquote riding the hot hand as JF Wool could get so far this season. So I understand the thinking and going back to Dobes again. The shutout loss the previous Saturday night in Syracuse, 5-0. If you remember last week, we called that an ugly loss for the Laval Rocket. And quite frankly, this one against the Toronto Marlies put that one to shame. This was another 5-0 shutout, and Laval just didn't show up. Tons more penalties, and a lot of stick infractions, chasing the game. You could see the frustration there. Lucas Candata after the game calling it embarrassing. It's just, it was whatever good energy and good feelings they got out of Friday night's game, it was gone 24 hours later. And it was back to the drawing board, basically, back to square one. The one thing that I did find encouraging on Saturday night was JF Wool's choices for his line combinations and his lineup. And as you see here for Saturday night, the prospects got a more prominent position in the lineup, particularly for the forwards. Was very happy to see Joshua Waugh and Sean Farrell promoted to the top line. That also moved Riley Kidney up in the lineup to the second line, and really pleased to see Jan Mysak moved up to the third line after he had been a healthy scratch earlier in the week. Part of the reason for the lineup shuffle, and I should mention that JF Wool went with 7 defensemen on both Friday and Saturday night against the Toronto Marlies, but part of the lineup shuffle was due to, again, injuries kind of hitting the Laval Rocket. While Brady Keeper did come back from injury, John Parker Jones went out with a lower body injury. He is considered week to week at the moment. Xavier Simoneau did not play on Saturday night. He is currently day to day with an injury. And interestingly enough, the Laval Rocket announcing on Monday that Lias Andersson is undergoing further medical evaluation for an injury he sustained at practice. And I'm guessing perhaps that was an injury sustained at Monday's practice, because Lias Andersson played in all 3 games last week. So we'll have to wait to hear more about that. But all is not lost, because there's some good news on the injury front. Emil Heineman was seen with a non-contact jersey on, skating with the team at Monday's practice. That means he is getting closer to a return, which would be a very good piece of news for the Laval Rocket, for Emil Heineman, and for the Canadiens organization, as he was really touted to be one of the top forwards for Laval this season, and potentially an early recall if Montreal needed it. So glad to see him back skating with the team. And Jared Davidson also skated at Monday's practice wearing a regular jersey. So it is very possible that we might see Jared Davidson back in the lineup in very short order, which would also be very good news for that young prospect. There were 2 recalls this past week for Wednesday's game against Utica. Nolan Yaremko and Yakov Novak were recalled from the Trois-Rivières Lions. Quite frankly, they were invisible to me on Wednesday night against Utica, and I was not surprised to see them both return to Trois-Rivières before Friday's game against the Toronto Marlies. So you take the good and the bad. Where does that leave Laval right now in the standings? Well, with a 2-7-1 record through 10 games played, that keeps them in 7th place in the North Division, which is last. Same thing for the Eastern Conference. They are 15th in the conference, and they are 31st in the league in terms of points, but they are tied for last place in terms of winning percentage. So as we keep saying, kind of the motto is really there's nowhere else to go but up. And we hope that rise through the points maybe starts happening rather quickly for the Laval Rocket before they get too mired into the mud down there at the bottom of the standings. So on the prospect breakdown for this week, we're going to start with the bad. The defense has been abysmal, and I'm not talking about individual defensive players like William Trudeau, Logan Mailloux, Jaden Struble. Struble's been good. Mailloux's had some really good moments. But would like to see all of them kind of collectively. Norlander's had Norlander had a tough game on Saturday night, unfortunately, I have to admit. Would really like to see the entire defensive core just really kind of stiffen up back there, and be a lot harder to beat. A lot of work needs to be done on the back end for sure. And quite frankly, goaltending consistency. And again, I am willing to be a bit more lenient with Jakub Dobes because this is his rookie season playing pro hockey, playing in the AHL. Strauss-Mann has experience in the AHL. He has played in the AHL before. He has not won a game for the Laval Rocket yet, and quite frankly, he hasn't come close to stealing a game for them or helping them win a game. He's not looked that strong in net, in my opinion. And I'll go back to something I've said recently, where I really believe Strauss-Mann is not the answer for the tandem for Jakub Dobes down in Laval. I think that position needs to be someone who is an older, more experienced veteran who doesn't mind being the backup, but can be there to simply be a solid and dependable backup netminder when you need it to come in and take a game on a 3-game week, and also be a really good mentor for Jakub Dobes and help him through not only the on-ice but the off-ice aspects of turning pro and the mental aspect of wins and losses and focus and all of those kinds of things. Will we see that change at any point soon? I don't really know. But right now, I don't think that Strauss-Mann is the way that they're going to find goaltending strength and consistency, while Jakub Dobes is going through his own growing pains and learning process, which is what he is there to do in the AHL. Now for the good. I did mention that Jaden Struble has done some good things. Not everything is bleak on the defense. Struble was the one to pot that single goal against the Utica Comets on Wednesday night, and it was his first pro goal. Really done in a nice fashion. Very pleased for him. And in fact, it was Sean Farrell who actually set up that goal. A couple of other teammates had some touches on the puck before Struble put it in. So Farrell was denied an assist or a point on that goal, but he was the one who dug it out of the corner, got it out of the corner, and got it into some open ice for his teammates to make it happen and make that goal happen. So credit to both Struble and Sean Farrell for their work on that goal. Yes, Jakub Dobes only had one win on the week of 3 games played, but he played 3 starts this week. This was, even playing Wednesday night and Friday night, that was his first pro back-to-back starts, and then gets tapped for a 3rd game 24 hours later. So, as I said, he was very good on Friday. He very much was a key piece in helping the Rocket to make that comeback victory. JF Uhl even said something along the lines of, if it weren't for Dobes, Toronto could have been up by a significant margin in that game. And so, really good to see that there are things to build on for Jakub Dobes. And Jan Mysak, I said that even though he was scratched on Wednesday, he came into the game on Friday against Toronto, and he was the one who scored the tying goal on Friday. Jan Mysak, I have said before that I find it unfortunate that he's typically buried on the 4th line with, quite frankly, not very offensively productive line mates on his wings. And like he did in the rookie tournament, where, perhaps it was something along the lines that JF Uhl had said about Mysak, his development a little more slow and wasn't a guy that you expected to really get too many points in the AHL. And then in the rookie tournament, Mysak came back and scored in consecutive games in that tournament. Well, Mysak had been a healthy scratch on Wednesday night, and he came back with full force on Friday and scored the tying goal, which allowed them to then start moving forward and really take control of that 3rd period and win that game. But if I have to pick a standout star for the week, it would have to be Logan Mailloux. And Logan Mailloux this week did some really good work on Friday night. He got 2 assists on Friday. Philippe Maillet was the one who scored 2 of the 4 goals in the third period in order for Laval to make that comeback win. But who set up those plays? It was Logan Mailloux. Both times it was Philippe Maillet deflecting Logan Mailloux's point shot to get both of those goals. So Mailloux did get an assist on both of those goals. I was a little disappointed he didn't get a star on that night. I thought he played very well, and as I say, it was his big point shot that really made those 2 goals happen and helped propel Laval to that victory. So Logan Mailloux is my standout star this week. Now, the Laval look ahead for this week is a little unusual. Would you believe me if I told you that the Laval Rocket isn't playing a single game this week? Because they're not. It's like they have a bye week. It's not something that I've seen on an AHL schedule in recent years, that's for sure. And it's because it's setting up, they have off all this week, and it's setting up a 5-game week next week. 5. I mean, it's a lot if a team plays 4 games in a week, much less 5. And it all starts on Sunday when they travel to Manitoba to take on the Moose, a Central Division opponent. They will be playing an afternoon matinee on Sunday against the Moose, and then they will turn around on Monday morning at 11:30 Eastern Time. This is going to be an interesting test for Laval. They have a full week of practice this week, 5 full days of practice. And JFL, I guarantee, is going to put them through their paces for this practice this week in preparation for next week. But you've got a time change. You've got an opponent you haven't seen yet this year. Manitoba is 4-4 to start the season. They're at an even 500, so they are a decent team to play against. The Winnipeg Jets, AHL affiliate. They're going to be playing on the road. Different time, time changes a bit different. Afternoon game on a Sunday, and then a morning Monday game, which is going to be very different for Laval. So it will be very interesting to see how they react to this change in the schedule. Are they going to be well rested after a week of no games, or is it going to be too long between games? It will be fascinating, and it's very hard to predict what these 2 games in Manitoba are going to look like. But you can guarantee we're going to talk about it next Tuesday. And Patrick Williams is going to be back here with me on the show next Tuesday for a visit here in the studio. And he is going to chat with us about how Laval is doing and about this very odd 5 games in a week schedule that Laval is staring down for next week, which even to Patrick Williams, who has been covering the AHL for years, has really never seen before. If you are enjoying getting all of this information in depth about the Laval Rocket and how the Montreal Canadiens prospects are doing in the AHL, if you like this kind of content and the content we offer here at the Rocket Sports Media YouTube channel, if you haven't done so, I'd ask that you just please take a moment and tap that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you always know when we post a new video, and of course, hit that like button as well. Leave a comment. We'd always love to hear from our viewers. And if you missed last week's show, you can check that out right here. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks so much for watching.